Good evening and welcome. This evening, we will be presenting the proposed safety improvements at the I-93 southbound off-ramp, Exit 8 at Willard Street and Ritucci Drive. My name is Kathy Doherty, and I'm a project manager for the proposed project. I work in the project management section at the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division, headquartered in Boston. The purpose of this hearing is to provide a method for the Commonwealth to furnish to the public information concerning the state's highway construction proposals and to give every interested resident of the area an opportunity to be heard on the proposed project. Also, this hearing gives the Commonwealth an opportunity to receive information from local sources, which will be valuable to us in making decisions as the design progresses. First, we would like to present some procedural elements of the design public hearing and review the functionality of the Zoom software. Kayla Sousa, who you heard from setting up the translators, one of our producers for this evening from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Office of Operational Excellence, will present this information. Kayla?
While this hearing is not being recorded, all parts of public hearings are public record, so MassDOT can retain and distribute all parts of the hearing. If you type a question or ask one verbally, know that you will be part of the record, so please use both functions for project-related business only. If you're not comfortable being included in those types of records, you can choose to just listen in today or excuse yourself from the hearing entirely. Again, we will have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. All questions and comments are welcome. However, please refrain from any disrespectful comments. Lastly, a survey will pop up at the end of the hearing. Please take the time to answer it. Your feedback is important to us. On your screen now is the MassDOT Diversity and Civil Rights Statement. If you are interested in learning more about our diversity and civil rights policies and how they affect our public meetings and hearings, please contact the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights. I will now hand things back over to our project manager, Kathy.
Thanks again, Kayla. A handout has been prepared and posted to the MassDOT website where you went to register for this meeting. In the handout, you will find documentation which may be useful in understanding the project and instruct you how to submit formal comments in response to this presentation. The notice of meeting is included on page 2 of the handout. This notice appeared in the Patriot Ledger and the Quincy Sun. You may have read about this design public hearing on the MassDOT Facebook or Twitter account, or seen a project flyer at one of the numerous locations shown on this slide. Also, you may have found a project flyer or other information about this project on the City of Quincy website. There are numerous people from MassDOT, the City of Quincy, and consultants to the City of Quincy joining me this evening that will assist with this design public hearing. You have already heard from Kayla, and she will return to assist during the question and discussion portion of this presentation. Mark Hicks from the MassDOT Right-of-Way Office will be presenting the right-of-way requirements for this project. Allison Rule, the City of Quincy traffic engineer, will be presenting the project limits and history of the project. Catherine Patch and Matthew Skelly from Fuss & O'Neill, the consultant to the city on this project, will be presenting information specific to this project. Michael McNutt from our Office of Operational Excellence will be assisting during the question and discussion portion of this presentation. And finally, Joe Doucette, our Assistant District Project Engineer, and Edward Grennan from the City of Quincy are here to listen to your comments and concerns and assist us in answering your questions. Now that we've covered all the formalities of the design public hearing, we're ready to present specific information regarding this project. During this project, we will explain the purpose of the project, explain our approach to the project, and indicate how you may be affected. Also, we will explain how you can submit your comments and questions about the project, which may be included in the official hearing transcript. We estimate that the total project will cost approximately $1.5 million. The total estimated cost for the project does not include right-of-way acquisition costs. The Federal Highway Administration will be funding 80%, and MassDOT funding the remaining 20% of the total construction cost. This project must be programmed in the statewide Transportation Improvement Program in the appropriate federal fiscal year in order for MassDOT to solicit bids for eventual construction. Now, we will move on to the substance of the presentation. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Catherine Patch from Fuss & O'Neill, who has been retained by the City of Quincy. Please keep in mind that the project we are presenting is still in the design phase. All your questions and comments will be taken into consideration when completing the project design. Catherine?
Thanks, Kathy. And hello, everyone. As Kathy mentioned, my name is Catherine Patch. I am a senior transportation engineer at Fussin O'Neill, and I'm going to quickly review the presentation agenda with you for tonight. Ali Rule is going to take us through the project area and the background of the project before Matt Skelly from Fussin O'Neill then details the project initiation process, as well as the goals and the design alternatives that we've explored so far. I will then take you through the proposed scope of work for our preferred alternative, as well as the project's next steps, before Kathy and the MassDOT team review the project impacts before we go forward with the Q&A session. And with that, I will pass it off to Ali.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening to discuss this project. Just to orient everyone to the study location that we're talking about, it's the intersection of Willard Street, Ricciuti Drive, and the I-93 southbound off-ramp at exit 8. As you can see in this graphic, the major focus of the study area is the intersection itself, but we do extend a bit to the north at the Copeland Street intersection, and then further to the south where we end at the limits of the Furnace Brook Rotary. And the intersection provides access to and from the highway, as well as up Ricciuti Drive, which provides access to residential, commercial, and recreational land uses. A little bit about the project timeline. This has been an effort that's been ongoing for the past 4 years. In August of 2019, we did some initial analyses to support the fact that this reconstruction project would be viable. In 2019, we took a deeper look into the safety issues that occur at this intersection with a road safety audit. In April of 2020, the city initiated a state project formally. And then since that time, we've been working and progressing forward the 25% design documents. And we're here today to solicit public feedback. And with that, I'd like to introduce Matt Skelly from the Fussin O'Neill project team to discuss the project more.
Thanks, Ali. So I'm going to get into some of the technical details of this project, and really what's at the heart of it. What you all, surely folks who are in attendance tonight, are well aware, this is a pretty dangerous intersection. We were out, as Ali mentioned, in 2019, conducting a road safety audit here, and we found a number of things that were required addressing. Certainly not the least of which is this conflict point that you see on the screen here with folks driving down Willard Street needing to cross that off-ramp traffic to get up Ricciuti Drive. That's where you have a high-speed crossing, traffic coming off the ramp, and it's really tough when you're looking back over your shoulder there to try to pick out a gap in the traffic that you will be able to get through without a collision. We also noted at the time pavement markings were inadequate, and the signage also did not totally make it clear to drivers what to expect at this intersection. So one of the first things we did was take a look at the crash history. Don't worry about trying to interpret everything on this figure here, but all you see, all those squiggly lines are crashes. The most important takeaway when it came to this crash history review is that this intersection experiences crashes at 3 times the rate that would be expected for an intersection in this area. So that told us right off the bat that we knew that there was a serious problem that needed to be addressed here. I'll also note that a high percentage of these crashes were either rear ends or angle crashes, and those angle crashes, those are the really dangerous ones where you can start to see some pretty serious injuries. Also on the crash front, this intersection now is in the top 5% of the state, that's statewide, top 5% highest crash clusters. So that's obviously pretty serious. This means that this intersection is eligible for highway safety improvement program funding, and that actually was not the case in 2019 when we began looking at this intersection. So since we begun studying it, the conditions have actually gotten worse crash-wise. That's not to say that safety is the only concern at this intersection. Again, for folks who are familiar with it, this is also an intersection where if you're on Willard Street, you can experience some pretty significant delays, especially during that afternoon peak hour when you've got everybody heading south to leave the city, using this off ramp, sometimes even as a cut through to just get back on 93 a little bit later on. As all of those trips are streaming down that off ramp, it's really tough for the folks on Willard Street to find a gap to break through. That can result in delays on Willard Street of up to 10 minutes per vehicle at times. And as you see here, a very lengthy queue stretching all the way back at times to the Copeland Street intersection back under the 93 underpass. Also in the concerns, and this is also really important, is pedestrian, bicyclists. Today, you don't see a ton of bike and ped experience out here, and you can understand why, right? This is not a place that feels safe to ride a bike. Even just trying to make your way across these crosswalks that are pictured on the screen here, it feels very dangerous. The way it is today, you have to navigate essentially that through movement from Willard Street, as well as the off-ramp traffic and the Ricciuti traffic. So just trying to make your way across this area as a pedestrian, very hazardous. So there's a pretty good background on what the problems are, as I'm sure you're all well aware. What do we want to accomplish here in this project? Number one goal is to improve safety for all roadway users. So certainly, finding ways to reduce that crash history, especially those dangerous angle crashes, that's a huge goal for this project. We want to hopefully find a way to calm traffic so that everybody's moving through here a little bit more slowly, and improve ADA accessibility for pedestrians, make this a more comfortable place for bicyclists, find ways to improve sight distance where we can, and certainly when we're done here, we want to leave this intersection with very clear signage and pavement markings so that everyone will understand what's going on. While we're making those safety improvements, we also need to keep in mind those congestion concerns. We want to make sure that nothing we're doing here is going to make congestion worse. In fact, we certainly hope to make congestion experience significantly better. It's very important that we're, trying to make sure that folks don't, have to wait those lengthy queues on Willard Street, while we're also providing enough gaps in traffic for Ricciuti Drive to get out as well, all while managing that ramp traffic. So when we looked at this, we thought of a few different alternatives, and I'll just run through these quickly. The first one that we thought of right off the bat was, hey, why don't we think about a roundabout here? That's a popular new solution that you see coming up in a lot of places. Huge safety benefits for roundabouts. We wanted to make sure that we vetted that through, and it turns out roundabout not going to work here. The traffic volumes are unbalanced in such a way that kind of no matter what you do, you're never going to be able to find a gap in traffic for those folks getting out of Ricciuti to get into the roundabout. So that didn't work. So we were back to the drawing board a little bit. We looked at these two other options that you'll see here on the center and right of your screen. Essentially, the one on the right maintains that kind of slip lane, we'll call it, the through movement on Ricciuti, while the center option kind of tees up the intersection a little bit more, and provides a little bit more dedicated facilities for bicyclists, maybe makes things make a little more sense for pedestrians. So those were our three concepts that we kind of looked at, and I'm going to turn it back over to Catherine to talk about how they were advanced.
Thanks, Matt. So based on the three alternatives that you just saw, those are the ones that we kind of explored for the purpose of this project. And with a lot of kind of vetting between the city and the state, we landed on what's shown on your screen right now, which is a signalized intersection that has new bike and ped accommodations. This signalization of the intersection will help decrease the speeds of those coming off of I-93 to Willard Street, and allow the Willard Street and Ricciuti Drive approaches to enter the flow of traffic without having to look for that gap. It'll provide that red light for the ramp, the green light for the side streets, and it'll kind of give everybody a sense of priority as they move through the intersection. Introducing signalization also gives us the option, or gives us what we're going to do is to create an exclusive pedestrian phase to minimize the vehicle pedestrian conflicts. So traffic will get an all red all the way through the intersection, and pedestrians will be able to have new pedestrian heads on that signal equipment that will have a countdown timer that'll help them kind of navigate the intersection more safely. And then, as Matt mentioned, one of the goals we set out on this project was to have fresh pavement markings out here so that everyone understands exactly where they're supposed to be. And so this entire intersection will be milled and overlaid, and new pavement striping will be implemented. In addition, we are proposing 5-foot bike lanes with painted buffers on Willard Street, and that will help cyclists be able to navigate the intersection, as well as with a two-stage turn box that you'll see in the center of the intersection that I'll detail a couple slides from now. Pedestrian curb ramps will all be upgraded as part of this project, and a new crosswalk across Ricciuti Drive with a refuge island in the middle to kind of split up that crossing distance so the pedestrians don't have quite so far to go on that first leg. You'll also notice on this graphic there is new sidewalk in the southwest corner of the intersection. For those that know where the UPS store is, in the lower left corner of your screen. This sidewalk will provide access to that UPS store that is not currently there, so that'll be another improvement that we initiate as part of this project. Now you are seeing a bird's eye view of the intersection. I know when Allie first gave us the project limits overview here, we kind of focused on this whole area. So I want to kind of bring that piece back in. So showing you the project extents here, if you can direct your attention to the upper left corner and the lower right corners of your screen, you can see that we are making improvements outside of the actual intersection as well. And the next slide will show you those areas in a little bit more detail. So again, in the upper right, you are looking at the intersection closest to Copeland Street, where we are going to be adding a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So that will give pedestrians the ability to push a button on either side of that crosswalk to activate the yellow strobe lights, and that will also have pedestrian warning signs associated with it. That will increase pedestrian safety on the northern limit of our project. And then as well as on the southern side of our project down by Douglas Street before everyone comes through to enter the rotary at Furnace Brook. Those two traffic lanes will merge down to one lane prior to entering the rotary. And we are also improving the ADA curb ramps in this location, as well as restriping the crosswalk, really to bring a higher sense of priority into this area and kind of be able to have people more safely navigate before they enter the rotary or as they're coming in and out of Douglas Street. I know I've honed in on this quite a bit, but I'm still going to keep it going. One of our big goals here was to improve safety for bicyclists and pedestrians. And so after some back and forth with the Complete Streets team at MassDOT, we decided that the sidewalk locations that we have, the ramp locations, and then this two-stage turn box is something that we are going to implement here. So this will allow cyclists that are coming from Willard Street to kind of on the Willard Street green light, progress through the intersection past the ramp and hold there for a moment and then the ramp will get the green light and they will be able to proceed. They're kind of always moving with the through movement of vehicles and traffic. So that'll help kind of move everybody through the intersection in the safest way possible. And it will also invite some future bike connections and facilities in the area that will be constructed in later on from this project. So when we start to think about projects like this that are going to interrupt an entire intersection, we often think, well, what's going to happen during construction? Because that is usually the most intrusive time. So as we move through that process, we are still, as Kathy has mentioned, in the early stages of design, but we know that we are going to need temporary lane closures as part of this project, as well as temporary pedestrian detours. We are confident that residential and business access will be maintained throughout construction. And we will, of course, be in coordination with emergency responses, both locally and regionally, in order to make sure that they have full access to this area as needed. So next steps as we move through, I know tonight we are at August 29th. Our design public hearing is this evening. From this point, we will be internalizing your comments and moving forward with our 75% design through November of this year. After that, we will go through 2 more design phases to get us into final design that is scheduled right now to happen in May of 2025. Based on that process that happens in between, we will be able to outline when construction funding will be allocated to this project and be able to schedule an advertisement date. And with that, I would like to pass it back to Kathy and the MassDOT team to outline how properties will be impacted as part of this project.
Thanks, Catherine. Now we would like to hear from Mark Hicks. As you may recall, Mark is from the MassDOT Right-of-Way Office. Mark?
Thank you, Kathy. Hi, my name is Mark Hicks. The Right-of-Way Bureau is responsible for acquiring all necessary rights and private and public lands for the design, construction, and the implementation of this project. Affected property owners will be contacted by personnel from the Right-of-Way Bureau or consultants representing the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division. The procedures used must comply with state and federal regulations governing the acquisition process. The current design plan indicates that fee takings and permanent easements may be required. Other areas may also require temporary construction easements. Affected property owners' rights are protected under Massachusetts general laws, primarily Chapter 79. If a project is receiving federal funds, the property owner's rights are further defined under Title III of the Real Property Act of 1970 as amended. Thank you, and back to you, Kathy.
Thanks, Mark. As stated previously, the purpose of this hearing is to solicit your input regarding this project. As the plans are not yet complete, we may not be able to answer all of your questions or respond to all of your comments at this time. The last sheet of the handout is a mail-in sheet. If you have any questions or comments which you would like to submit in writing, you may use this sheet for that purpose. Also, you can mail it to the Department of Transportation within 10 business days of this date, and it will become part of the official record. Remember, the design public hearing is not being recorded. However, certain portions of this may be kept for our purposes. If you do not wish to be recorded by participating in this evening's questions and discussions, or if you have a question or comment after the meeting is ended, please email us at massdot.state.mass.us. Also, the slide presentation will be available on our website as well as the City of Quincy website for future reference. To ask a question verbally, click the raise hand icon and Mike will call on you and unmute your microphone. Remember, you need to unmute yourself as well to be heard. If you prefer to type your question, you can click the Q&A icon and type your question. For either method, please ask only one question at a time so everyone has a chance to participate. Please limit yourself to 2 minutes to be respectful of others' times. You can also raise your hand again or submit another question in the Q&A box to rejoin the queue. At this time, I would like to turn the presentation over to Mike McNulty. Mike?
Hello. MassDOT has a tradition of allowing public officials to speak and ask questions before we open it up to general Q&A. So if there are any public officials in attendance, you can drop your name and your title in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand. And at this time, so if there are any public officials, you could drop your name. And I'm just going to give people a second before I start calling out names. Okay, we have a couple hands. First, I'll call Doreen. You have the mic?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I think I am registered under Doreen Boggood. Hi, this is John Keenan, State Senator. How are you?
Oh, good, good.
You know,
I can change your name. If you put it in the Q&A, I can change it. But it's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's fine. So, John Keenan, I want to say thank you for holding the meeting today. Thank you for all the work that's been done by the state and the city in getting the design of the intersection to the point that it's at now. I just want to offer to the residents that if they have any concerns about the progress of the design, about the progress of the intersection once we get to the construction stage, which I know is to be determined in terms of timing, to please feel free to reach out to my office. What you highlighted early on in the presentation is something that I think is worthy of focusing on, and that's that this is one of the top 5% intersections in the Commonwealth in terms of number of accidents. And so that's certainly of concern. If there's an upside to that, I think it's that the work that is to be done at this intersection to address the problems in terms of the number of accidents and to make it safer for pedestrians, bikes, people who are riding bikes, and to people who are driving, is that it appears the cost, and this will lead to a question, will be substantially less to fix this intersection than it might be to fix other intersections with situations that are in the top 5%. So that leads to the question, has there been any determination, or is it too early really to get a sense of what this work will cost?
Thank you. Next, we have a hand up, Bruce Ayers. I will give you the floor. You are unmuted. Can you speak? Bruce?
How's that?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Hey, thank you. I just want to follow up on Senator Keenan's comments and thank everybody. This obviously is a very important issue to my district. I want to thank everybody involved, the Quincy traffic engineer, Allison Rule, Ed Grennan, and everybody at MassDOT. Everybody at the meeting tonight here that's weighing in has witnessed how dangerous this intersection is, particularly, if there's a summertime event where there's large functions at Granite Links, there could be the soccer and baseball fields. It creates a very risky situation down at the bottom of Rashudi Drive where, as you alluded to earlier, people are coming off I-93 and it backs up all the way down. I spoke to some of the business owners where they've seen it go all the way down Willard Street to the Common Market, if you can believe that. It's crucial to install these measures. I look forward to working with Senator Keenan to help facilitate things, whether it's advocating for the necessary state funding or the permits required. Also with our city officials, Councilor Devine and others who have really jumped in and helped out with this project, the mayor's office, Mayor Koch. But it's great to see this project moving forward tonight, and I look forward to doing what I can as one of the legislators to help facilitate it.
Thank you. Next, we have a hand up from James Devine. I'm gonna unmute you. And you should have the floor. Does your mic work?
I think so. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I'd like to reiterate exactly what Bruce Ayers and Senator Keenan said. But then also, I had a concern because I have some constituents that live on Springfield and Douglas. And I was hoping that there's some consideration to make sure that there's a break in traffic so that they're able to cross safely. Right now, it's virtually impossible for them to get into Douglas Street. I believe that's at the southernmost point of the project.
James, I'm happy to take that question. We are narrowing down this approach as it approaches Douglas Street. So as you drive down Willard Street and approach the Rotary, we are going to be narrowing down that area where vehicles only have one travel lane to proceed past Douglas Street. So that should considerably help everybody coming out of the Rotary and trying to get into Douglas Street, with kind of only having to pass one vehicle instead of kind of how they're now jockeying for position to try to get into the Rotary. So I believe that that'll help create a gap in traffic that they're looking for.
Thank you. I see a hand from Mimi Bassamo at Gmail. So I'm going to unmute.
Hello, thanks for
Hello.
taking my call. I am asking my question, and my comment is that many people I know would like to be able to be here at this meeting. However, it's such a busy time. People are still away on vacations or busy with getting their kids off to school. And although I've learned that the Mass DOT has not done meetings in person since COVID, perhaps, well, we would like to know if we could hold a meeting in person so that you could explain this intersection again to more people in the community. I think it's very important. That's our question.
Thank you for your question, Mimi. This is Kathy Doherty, the project manager at Mass DOT, and I've answered numerous emails prior to this meeting, and I've also answered a typed-in question that someone brought in. So let me explain it to everybody. The COVID-19 measures that you are referring to are really no longer in effect because theoretically that's over. However, we do note that having these virtual design public hearings or all public meetings, we get a much greater amount of attendance and responses. So therefore, in order to get a in-person meeting, you have to get special permission from the chief engineer for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division, Carrie LaValle. So the city of Quincy, who is paying for the design phase of this, would have to send her a letter requesting that in-person meetings and justify having that meeting in person. We have 57 people participating in this evening's meeting. So it's going to be difficult to suggest or prove that we could get more people at an in-person meeting. Also, it would be very difficult to get the Cantonese and the Mandarin interpreters for a meeting, having separate rooms and stuff like that. So, like I said, if any other additional meetings and that kind of stuff would be at the city of Quincy's expense and would require them to do that, to send that letter justifying an in-person meeting, particularly, like I said, which it has been done before, but it might be kind of tough to justify given the participation this evening and the fact that the interpreters are here and we have space for those people who need those language interpreters.
Thank you. Next, we have a hand up from Rocky Payer. You have the floor.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Rocky Pierre.
Pierre, sorry.
Yep, no problem. So, based on the drawing, I've seen that I'm a cyclist and I went through that intersection so many times. Based on the drawing, I've seen that the bike lane will stop by Douglas Street. Is there any way to keep it going and keep the cyclists out of the danger zone up to when Willard Street turn into a regular street in Furnace Brook?
Thanks, Rocky. I think I can field that question, and Allie, feel free to jump in on this, or Kathy. So Rocky, we do have, that is our project limit for this project, and that is in part because we run into the Furnace Brook Parkway is actually under the jurisdiction of the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and so further coordination would be needed with them in order to continue the bike lanes kind of past the city street where we have it now. That is something that we can kind of bring to their attention as something that is desired by the public, but I don't see it as being part of this immediate project right now. And Allie, feel free to jump in if you have any more info on that.
Okay. I think we'll just move on to, we have a hand up from Matthew Lyons. And I apologize, you've had your hand up for a while, but I'm going to unmute you and give you the floor.
Hi. Hi, my name is Matthew Lyons. I'm a candidate for Ward 4 City Council. I was going to mention the Douglas Street access and people leaving it as well. But this is, and I understand that this is designed to improve the safety of it and have more access for bikes and pedestrians. But has there been any consideration to any future growth up in the Granite Links area? Whether it's at the golf course or whether it's another apartment complex or many other things that in the future will be built up there?
Thanks, Matthew. And I'm going to just say this a blanket statement. Allie and Matt, I think as I'm answering these, feel free to jump in. When we were doing traffic analysis up here, we did take traffic counts, and we were very aware of, I think, the development that is typical throughout the city, especially in this Ward 4 area. And so we took into consideration kind of what we consider to be a typical growth pattern for this type of area, and taking into consideration the land uses that are in the area. And so we didn't kind of look at anything in particular, but that is something that we kind of took a look at holistically as we moved through the traffic analysis and taking that into consideration.
Right. Thank you. We have a hand up from Greg. I will, Greg Bariza, will allow you to talk.
Hello, thank you. Yes, I want to second what Matt just raised, because currently before the city of Quincy is a proposal from the people who have the lease at Quarry Hills for a longer lease with the potential of building, for example, a hotel and significantly expanding the course up there. Plus, there's opportunities for more apartments in that area. So if you haven't taken into account a significant growth in the traffic, I think you may want to look at that again. The other thing is the car resale lot. Nobody said anything about the large auto carriers going up and down Riccuti Drive.
Sure. Thanks for your comment, Greg. Just to expand upon what Catherine discussed, we did project volumes to a future year of 2040 with the general traffic growth rate, which is typical of what we see in this area of Quincy. What is projected to be up at the golf course site is still speculative. We don't want kind of that conversation to slow down this immediate need for safety improvements, which is why we're progressing this project the way that we are. The future project does have good levels of service and room for additional capacity, even with those 2040 projected growth. And the second question regarding the large vehicles, we do use a design vehicle to accommodate those larger auto carriers to make sure that they're making the appropriate turn movements at this intersection.
Thank you. I think that's going to conclude the public officials section. We're going to move to the written Q&A.
Thanks, Michael. I have first a lengthy question that I'm going to read through in its entirety, and then I think I'm going to pass this to Matt. So Maria Mulligan typed in a question as we were presenting that says, the original purpose of the off-ramp from the highway to Ricciuti Drive, Willard Street intersection was to bring dirt from the Big Dig to the Quarry Hills to cap the landfill for the golf course. Today, I have observed that this off-ramp is used primarily as a cut-through for cars from the highway to traverse through West Quincy to avoid the traffic on 93-95 interchange. This cut-through causes massive backups and gridlock in the neighborhoods that flank Willard Street. What potential solutions have been considered to alleviate this cut-through influence of the traffic that comes from the off-ramp? Matt, do you want me to pause, or do you want me to answer that piece, or do you want me to read through the whole thing?
I think keep going.
Okay. So both the Furnace Brook Rotary and the Ricciuti Willard intersection pose enormous barriers to Quincy residents to get from the Furnace Brook Parkway to Blue Hills and Quarry Hills. These barriers make it nearly impossible for Quincy residents to traverse across them for pedestrians and biker safety. DCR identified this issue in their 2020 master plan. The recreation and respite benefits of Blue Hills and Quarry Hills open and green spaces are essential to our health and well-being. How will these unacceptable barriers be addressed? And then finally, since November of 2022, I have been advocating for a steering committee to be formed through the City Council with Quincy residents to participate in a holistic master planning effort with the experienced urban planners to find a way to alleviate inaccessibility and safety issues at the Furnace Brook Rotary and the Ricciuti Willard intersection, to enhance our access to our recreational and open spaces. Why hasn't this method of solving long-standing traffic problems been prioritized by the City of Quincy? And with that, I will pass it to Matt.
Sure. Thanks, Catherine, and thank you. Hi, Maria. This is all really awesome stuff, and thank you for reading it in its entirety, Catherine. So a few notes to touch on here. The cut through was definitely something that we observed. We even went into kind of some innovative traffic data analysis platforms to try to determine just how much of that cut through traffic or just how much of that ramp traffic was cut through, and it was difficult to ascertain the exact percentage. However, I think that there's a really great chance that a light at the bottom of that ramp is going to start to convince folks to stay on 93. So I wanted to touch on that point. In terms of a bigger, bigger picture study that is assessing barriers in the city. Obviously, those are really awesome. That's all really great stuff that you and folks from the city are participating in. I think this is essentially this is meant to be like a tactical project to improve safety at this intersection. And Catherine and Allie talked a little bit about project limits and that kind of thing. So this would take nothing away from the potential to do all of the stuff that you're talking about in your comments here. So hopefully that does. If Allie or if anybody else wants to jump in, feel free. But I think that hopefully that will address the majority of it.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks to Maria for your question. I am going to move on to the next one, which is from Betty Lowe. It says, why did the city of Quincy hire an engineering consultant to design a solution on land that is owned by the state and not the city? Allie, I'm happy to answer that, but it seems to be directed at you for the city of Quincy.
I can grab that.
Go ahead, Ed.
Oh, Ed Grennan, City of Quincy Traffic Director. When the city first initiated the process of looking at this intersection for an improvement, it wasn't yet, as Matt alluded to earlier, in that top 5% of crash locations, it wasn't eligible for HSIP funding. So in a way for the city to move the project along, to expedite it, to get it on the state's radar, we committed to funding the design process. And the way that worked is we had a mitigation fund set up through planning for one of the residential developments up at the top of Rashidi Drive elevation. So funds from that have been turned around into funding this, the design here in a partnership with the state to move towards getting the process of design done and then handing it over to the state for project funding and implementation.
Thank you very much, Ed. I will also note that I apologize, I misspoke. That was an additional comment from Marie. I will now read the comment that was from Betty Lowe that says, thanks for the presentation. Why not put bike lanes between parking spaces and curbs? Less chance of dooring cyclists. Betty, that's a great comment. We don't actually have any parking spaces in the area to which we are designing, but adding it with the curb does provide a little bit more separation. And that is something that we can explore with the Complete Streets team as we further this design process. Our next question is from Irene Lutz, and it says, due to the high speeds on Willard, the buffered bike lanes may not be enough for safety and comfort of cyclists. Can a physical protection be included? Bollards could be an additional traffic calming device. And Irene, I completely agree with you. And I think this also speaks to Betty's comment. These are things that we can look at as we further design in order to kind of provide more separation and more comfort for our cyclists as they continue to traverse this area. And I think that can lead us to our next written comment. I want to check in with Michael. We don't have any raised hands, correct?
We do have one hand. Bruce. Maybe we can to talk. Bruce Ayers, do you have your microphone work?
Thank you, Mike. You know what, I'm having a little problem with my computer here, but I did want to weigh in on a couple things that I know have come up. I did hear from councils at large, Nina Liang and Ann Mahoney, about the public meeting comments that were brought up earlier. I'm sure as the various steps of this project unfolds, I'll be happy to work with the city officials to perhaps put something together that could be a public meeting to explain more of the plans as they progress. I did want to point that out. And obviously, some of the key things, talking to some of the business owners recently, were I emphasized the 10-day comment period, and that all steps would be taken to minimize disruptions, during construction when it initially starts.
Thank you. Does anybody want to respond, or I'll just go to the next hand?
Yeah, I'll chime in that, we're happy to work with Representative Ayers and any members of the city council for some follow-up as we move forward in this process.
Thank you. We have James Devine. You have a hand up. I'm going to give you the floor.
I want to, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I'd like to say the same thing. As city councilor, we can work with Ed and Bruce to set up a public meeting if that's what's needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we get in from Rocky.
Hi.
Hey.
Once again, I want to say thank you for addressing the safety issues in that intersection. Going back to the drawing, I think, in my opinion, we are really addressing access, talking for cyclists. We are addressing access, better access for cyclists. But as far as safety precaution, I'm looking at the drawing, the two phases turn, I don't think it's clearly defined. And I don't believe we have real safety precaution. The reason why is because once you go for the first light, you go and then you stand on an island. Then you have to wait for the next light to go in the other direction to make that 90-degree angle. There's a light in Arlington, but on the Minuteman, there's a big intersection where if anyone wants to go and see how they do it, that would be a good reference as far as how to draw that green line. And so pedestrian, cyclists, and drivers can see. Yes, I'm looking at it. You see where the turn arrow is? That's an island. It doesn't really tell the drivers coming from the highway that, oh, okay, there's a bike coming right here. I think there should be also, going into the comments from Irene Lutz, going down by Douglas Street, I think Ballard in that area will do a better job, especially knowing in the afternoon how bad traffic is. A lot of drivers gonna try to take advantage of that back lane to go around other cars. And that's all I have for comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Rocky. I think those are really helpful comments. We will take a look at how to kind of highlight that two-stage turn box at the intersection, as well as kind of making sure that we have some safety precautions in there for cyclists as they kind of approach that roundabout on the south side of the project limit and coming towards Furnace Brook Parkway.
Thank you. One more hand. Ann Mahoney, you have a hand up. I'll give you the floor. Does your microphone?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. I just had a quick question, and I had two questions, actually. I know that the city, thank you, Ed, for explaining that, that the city has taken the steps to and had found funding for that. I always ask these questions of, you know, if we could share the funding with the city council and the taxpayers of the city of Quincy to know what funding went into this, and then will the city be reimbursed for that? That's the funding side of things. And then secondly, I actually appreciate Rocky's question too, because the island was a concern of mine too for safety. Just because it's exposing people that are there, and I know that it's not quite in the intersection of the exit ramp, but it still looks dangerous to me. I realize we're going to be slowing traffic, but there's also, did you take into consideration too, because there's the sun that comes over at a certain point in this area too is also blinding with the lights. I'm just curious about that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Anne, for your consideration on this. So I will start with the pedestrian refuge island in the middle here. So as pedestrians kind of move through, it's designed in a way that they won't be held to that spot to kind of jockey in the middle. This will be an exclusive pedestrian phase. So the whole intersection will be at a standstill in terms of vehicles, and the pedestrians will get the walk symbol. So they'll be able to move through on those crosswalks, traverse through the island, and clear the intersection before the vehicles begin their movements again. So that should increase their safety. The refuge island is designed to kind of be out of the flow of the main flow of traffic in the intersection, but they will still be able to kind of fully traverse the intersection and be back on the sidewalk by the time the vehicles start to move. And I'm sorry, I don't, Matt's my other person to answer questions in here, and I've forgotten the tail end of your question, and I don't know if Matt, you want to answer it, or if Ann can repeat it.
I can repeat it. Before we go on to that, if I could ask one question. So who gets to take the timing of this? Because I know throughout the city, sometimes we have, crosswalk areas, and we have people that can take, you have a crosswalk, but you can take a right, or you can go forward, you have the green light, but the other people have crosswalk. I get very concerned about this intersection with having crosswalks and people being able to cross with those things. So who gets to initiate the timing of these lights, if at all?
Initiating the timing, I'm not sure if I'm quite following your question, but this is just so I can provide a little bit of explanation, and Matt, feel free to jump in for me. So when the PEDs initiate, that when they kind of tap that button, it'll indicate to the signal that pedestrian is sitting there waiting. On the next phase, everything will go red, and the PEDs will get the chance to walk. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does. What I say initiating the timing, there's times that you can actually make the lights either turn faster, red and green, or turn slower, depending on what the traffic is, to be able to move traffic. And I'm just wondering is that the state, or will that be the city that or will that actually happen with the lights? So you can change the timing of the lights, whether or not how long the light's going to stay red or stay green to move traffic along.
So yes, that is something that is being designed. That is also something that the city will own this signal when it is completed. And so they will have the kind of power to move those timings around as needed once this signal is operational, in order to kind of make sure that everyone has a good comfort level here.
Okay. And then my other question was simply that it's Rashidi Drive, and in this particular area, during certain times of the day, the sunlight can be blinding, whether you're looking up or coming down. It's less coming off the ramp, it's more coming across Willard to go up Rashidi Drive. It can be, it could be with the light. I just want to make sure that that's taken into consideration. I know the light will slow things down, but it's just something that it's further up Rashidi Drive, but it's also there that sunlight can kind of cause some glaring effects in that area.
Yes, and I completely understand that. And kind of one of our goals here is to slow people down so that as they're going through, they're not kind of blinded by the sun and driving very quickly at the same time. Introducing the signal here, the illumination of the signal will hopefully be visible, and that's something that we can definitely take into consideration as we further the design. But that light indication is really what everyone's going to be looking for once they're comfortable with this new operation here, and that will hopefully be able to kind of indicate who has priority to move and in which direction. And so that will keep everyone as safe as possible.
Okay. And then moving it back to Ed Granite, if we could find out what the cost, I realized that we had Fuss and O'Neill do this, but the cost is important for us to know too, because I know that in the package, it was saying that it would be about a $1.5 million cost to the state to be able to actually implement this, but we'd also like to know what the cost is for the city for doing the design for the state, and whether or not we would be reimbursed for that, or if there would be something that would come from that as well.
Sure. So we wouldn't be reimbursed. We got the majority of the money is a mitigation package through a developer. They were coming into the city, they were going to have cars on the road that were going to impact the traffic flow around here. So we were able to get from them a package of $250,000 that we have chosen to expend on the design here. So we won't get any money back from the state. The design funds are spent by the city.
Okay, I just missed that. Was that elevation? What mitigation money was it? Just out of curiosity.
That was Elevation Apartments.
So that was for further down
at the end of the drive. Yep.
Yep. And then my last question is,
I'm sorry.
I really, when did we start the design for this? Like, when did Fuss and O'Neill start the design for this?
I believe it was 2020.
Okay. So again, this, I guess my concern too is I'll go back to the 99-year lease, because one of the concerns that we had on the council is the 99-year lease is this intersection being fixed. And I do think some of the things that I know you're saying, Allie, that this will carry us through 2040, but traffic throughout this whole area, I think it was bad before 2019. So, but I just think it's something that we really have to take into consideration, because there's a lot of new development that's going to be happening, not just in this area, but also down on Furnace Brook Parkway with new development that's coming on. So we're actually putting more cars on the road that's going to impact this area. So I do think that this area and Furnace Brook Rotary should be something we take into consideration.
Yeah, totally. And, this has been an area that we've known has been a safety concern and one that we've wanted to target, which is why we went through the process of initializing the project, why we're the ones funding the design. Any future growth, I'm not sure, nothing's written in stone. Any future growth would certainly go through the same type of planning process that allowed us to get the $250,000 mitigation package from the queue. So that same process, were there to be additional growth up in this area, I think the city would be willing to work with any future developers to identify what the adds would be on our system and be able to work with them to target a mitigation package to go straight back into the traffic system, just like we're doing right here at this location.
Thank you. And thank you for the questions. We appreciate them. We do have other hands up. I think we should get to Janet and Elliot. I'm not sure who it is, but I'll give you the floor and allow you to talk.
Okay. Yes, thank you. You can hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, great. Number one, I appreciate this meeting because obviously we live in Quarry Hills, and one of the things that we are upset about is that crossing that lane is like taking your life into your hands every time. In fact, as a matter of fact, I did get hit leaving the area one time because somebody rear-ended me. The project was, we found out by, my wife happened to pick up one of the newspapers, otherwise we wouldn't have known about it. And I'm wondering, was Quarry Hills given notice that this meeting was going to be held? That's number one. And number two, I understand that the project is being considered to be started or finished by 2025. In the article that we read, it stated that there would be temporary lighting. When would that go into effect?
Thank you, Elliot, for your question. I am capable of answering probably part of that, but I might pass it to Allie and Matt in the middle. I'm going to start kind of from the back and work my way back forward. The temporary signal is under consideration with the district at the Mass DOT District 6 at the moment. We don't have an immediate schedule for when that will be implemented. And then I think this, going back to the advertisement, I believe Connor, can you flip back a couple slides to note where else this meeting was advertised? And Elliot, I think that might answer the latter part or the beginning part of your question.
Okay, I know my wife picked up the Quincy Sun.
Yes, but it was advertised in the Sun as well as the Patriot Ledger. It was advertised also on MassDOT's Facebook and Twitter. The city of Quincy had it on their website as well as in several other locations for people to access.
Yeah, well, I would think where we have so many people between the queue in Quarry Hills and the golf course, Granite Links, that if these people were notified, I think you would have a lot more people in attendance because obviously it's a major concern. And the other thing is if they consider temporarily, putting in speed bumps. I know when I come off the ramp to cross over to go to Quarry Hills up Rasuti Drive, there are people that don't like to wait in line, and they cut around, and they actually cut more people off. If they could put in a Jersey barrier over there so nobody could cross over unless they were in that right lane turn only, it would make life a lot easier. I sit there sometimes and wonder if somebody's going to get out there and start a major fight. It gets very serious when you're back down to the bottom hill, to the bottom of the hill, and somebody just comes streaming by and decides to cut off everybody. It gets, in this type of living that we're living in right now, it's just aggravating more people, and it's just exacerbating the situation of people who think they're more important than somebody else and they don't have to wait in line. And on the other side, if you could put temporary speed bumps to slow people down, because I think even with lights, I question whether people are even going to realize that there are lights there when they come speeding off that ramp. I mean, I have watched them. It is incredible.
Yeah, Elliot, I really appreciate your feedback here. This is part of the reason we're here tonight, is to make sure that we hear from kind of our locals who go through this intersection every day. And speaking to kind of the temporary measures that can be put in, we will definitely coordinate with the city and kind of see what's appropriate in this area and kind of make those suggestions to MassDOT. And then I think that's kind of how we'll proceed in that direction and kind of see what is appropriate. And in terms of whether or not the light will slow people down, there will definitely be some warning signs that will be placed ahead of this intersection once that goes into place, to alert people that there is a signal ahead, and there is a significant period of time that even once the signal is installed, that it will just be kind of in a yellow flash mode when it first gets there, to kind of let everyone know that that infrastructure is there. It is not yet fully operational, but it will kind of just get everyone used to potentially having a new traffic pattern in this area. That will be something that is implemented anytime that a new signal goes in. So I appreciate your concern, and we will definitely continue to coordinate this effort with the city, to kind of figure out what temporary measures can be taken in order to improve safety in this intersection in the short term.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, we do have some hands, but I do see there's over 20 questions in the Q&A. So maybe we should switch gears a little bit and start to tackle some of those questions.
Definitely. The first one I'm going to read off is from Alan Jackson, and it says, how will you prevent traffic light backup into the Copeland Street intersection, as well as the southbound side of the Southeast Expressway? And I'm going to pass that one to Matt, as he is our traffic expert.
Sure. That's actually probably that's one of the best parts of this proposed design, is that simply putting a traffic signal there helps all traffic in every approach, especially Willard Street and Ricciuti Drive. As I mentioned, one of the important parts here is that we can't allow any queuing to back up on a 93. But letting some of the cars on that off-ramp come to a stop and begin to queue up there allows more than enough gaps for folks to get across. So that is definitely a big plus from this design.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan, for your comment, and thanks, Matt. Our next one is from Irene Lutz. And it says there are no bicycle connections to the Copeland-Willard intersection from Ricciuti, and so bicyclists are required to travel far out of their way to navigate the rotary. Can contraflow access be provided by widening the sidewalk into a shared use path? Please note that bicycling on sidewalks is prohibited by ordinance through Quincy. And thank you, Irene. We are aware of that ordinance. Again, I think this is something that we can take into consideration with a larger project for the city. Our project limits are kind of confined here to the intersection and the kind of up to the Copeland intersection and down to Douglas Street as shown on this image. But I think that kind of the city has plans to kind of carry this forward in the future in order to create some more connectivity.
I can add to that, Catherine. There are some areas where widening the sidewalk in between Willard Street and the southbound barrel of 93 would be possible, but there is a very steep grade kind of all the way from the off ramp to 93 there. So it's pretty tight both vertically and horizontally in there. And we have looked at that. I get a contraflow like sidewalk level shared use path. I don't know that we considered that option specifically, so that'd be something to look at. For now, you can see that in that right lane, there are sharrows painted, so that's kind of how we're addressing that concern at this stage of design. Something we'll keep taking a look at.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I will also say that this is something that we have been, the bicycle facilities in this area, something that we have been in constant communication with, between us as designers, the city, as well as MassDOT, to make sure that kind of we have as many advocates for this this particular issue as possible, in making the area as safe as we can, given the design that we are undertaking here. With that, I'm going to move on to the next comment from Lisa Johnson. And that comment says, has any consideration been given to people exiting the UPS store parking lot, turning left onto Ricciuti Drive? This is a very difficult turn. Lisa, I'm going to read between the lines on this a little bit and think that that is a very difficult turn because you have high-speed people coming off the ramp and kind of making that right turn in a very quick clip. Installing the signal at this intersection is going to improve this experience. When you have a green light for Ricciuti and Willard, you're going to be able to have some gaps there. We're not allowing right turns on red based on the design at this time. So that will be something that people are at the ramp will be at a standstill, and that will provide kind of the safe gap in traffic. Because I know you're also trying to like look around that retaining wall that's there, which is near impossible. So it's this adding the signal to this area is definitely going to be a safety improvement for anyone entering or exiting the UPS store as well. With that, I'm going to move on to another comment from Alan Johnson. I'm just kind of going through these chronologically, everybody. So when traffic is heavy and stopped, how easily will first responder emergency vehicles be able to traverse these new lanes? Will there be enough space for vehicles to get out of the way? So Alan, to answer that question, the answer is yes, absolutely. Based on MassDOT and city standards, the lane widths as well as the shoulder widths on these roads are either going to be maintained or going to be brought up to current design standards. That space will allow for vehicles in their travel lanes to move over into the shoulder, and then the shoulder on the opposite side, as well as the gap kind of that they have in the travel lane, will allow emergency responders to kind of clear the area. As Matt mentioned in the very beginning, safety is our first priority on this project, and so access for emergency vehicles. I know we've been highlighting bike and ped safety, but access for emergency vehicles is definitely in the forefront of our brain as well. With the next question is from Mike Cotter. Are the safety issues, as the safety issues have been identified, would it be possible to have any regulation of this intersection with police regulation, at least during the rush hour, which is probably all the time, while we wait for the solution in 2025? And I'm going to pass that comment right over to Allie.
Hi, thank you for your question. That is something that comes up quite frequently when discussing this. Is this will be great at some point when it's built, but what does that do for me today? And we have a permit application before MassDOT District 6 with the help of Representative Ayers and Senator Keenan to add temporary signal structures to this location to provide some more immediate relief. We're awaiting feedback from MassDOT District 6 on the timeline of that.
Thank you. Maybe this would be a good time to go back to some of the hands. We have a few hands up. Matthew Lyons, you have a hand up. I'll give you the floor.
Hi, I just want to say that I agree with the person from the Quarry Hills apartment that there should have been notification sent out for this meeting and any other meetings that is going to be discussing this in the future, as well as the people at Douglas Street. I know that they've complained to me on many occasions, knocking on the doors, and they certainly would have an opinion on all of this stuff. It just seems to me to be inadequate to have bike lanes put in when there's no bike lanes feeding it, no bike lanes after it. What are the plans to continue with that? But also, why would they not tell us that they were redesigning that area when they proposed the 99-year lease from the city? And I don't think this plan, as good as it is for the safety of pedestrians and bikers, it just doesn't seem to be. I'm not convinced that the light is going to stop the traffic from building up to Copeland Street or on the highway. But why weren't we notified about that they were redesigning that area when they presented the 99-year lease?
Okay, excuse me. This is Kathy Doherty, the project manager, and everyone is violating the one question, 2-minute rule, and we will start cutting you off. This is your first And last warning, please, only one question at a time. We have a lot of people who have a lot of questions, and we're going to try to address them. So at this point from now on, please limit yourself to just one question and 2 minutes. It's very hard for us to answer multiple questions to even remember what they are. But in answer to your first question, because I responded to the comment that was typed in, thank you, Mr. Lyons, for your comment. It is Mass DOT policy to advertise in local newspapers. It is not our policy to contact local abutters and stuff like that. So that's why it wasn't done. However, we do appreciate your comment, and it's something that now that newspapers are not as prevalent or as well read as they have been in the past, we may want to consider a different or an alternative method. The other people, Fussin O'Neill is going to have to answer the remainder of his questions, please.
Thanks, Kathy. I apologize. If we could repeat those, that would be helpful.
I can
go
hop
ahead.
in there for you, Catherine. You know, this design of making sure that we are handling the volumes that are coming off the ramp and on Willard Street and on Ricciuti Drive and into the future, importantly, is all standard practice that has been reviewed, vetted by both the city and MassDOT to make sure that we're not missing anything. This is definitely gonna help slow traffic coming off the ramp while not backing anything up onto the highway, and providing those gaps in traffic to help alleviate those really long queues on Willard Street and make sure that Ricciuti still gets out. So like I said, we reviewed a lot of different options for this, and everybody involved feels that this is the one that addresses everything the best and improves on our current conditions.
Thank you. Moving on with the hands, we have a hand up from Irene Lutz. Give you the floor.
Hi, I appreciate this meeting. This is really helpful to be able to see the plans that you're doing. I just wasn't sure that my suggestion of contraflow access along Willard Street to the Copeland Willard intersection was clearly understood, because there was discussion about the use of sharrows, which are in the direction of traffic. So if you're coming from Ricciuti Drive, it's much easier to commute into Boston by bike if you can go down, cross the off-ramp and go down Willard Street, and then take the Willard Street bike lanes out into Milton and head to the Neponset Trail via Granite. But right now we can't do that. So my suggestion was to allow for access on the sidewalk via the crosswalk that you're putting in with the trees and the new green space on the far side, that there be a bike, at least signage that bikes are allowed to go in that direction if the sidewalk can't be widened due to the grade. I just wanted to be sure that that was clearly understood. Thank you.
Sure, and I'll just jump in because I answered that last one. That is a very helpful clarification, Irene, and that's something that we'll work on with the city to see if we can find a way to make that work. That makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
Thanks. Rocky, your hand's been up for a while. Excuse me, I'll give you the floor.
So since safety is priority, as a driver, I would like to ask that we consider traffic coming from the highway, if they can build those groove pavement to alert sleepy and distracted drivers that there's a light coming, especially during winter time when you have very low visibility. Also, to protect cyclists waiting for the second light, I would like to have a sign that says no turn on red to go up Richuti Drive. Because if there's no sign, so I'm in between that driver getting home in the afternoon. So they're not very patient. And the third thing is accident happens. I don't know if in the plan security cameras are included, just to, if there's something happen, if they can go back, look at the camera and see exactly what happened. Thank you.
Thanks, Rocky. I think there were 3 components to that. One is alerting people on the ramp. One is the visibility of cyclists and kind of that space that they're occupying in the middle of the intersection for the no turn on red. And then, and my brain just escaped the third piece of it, but I know our stenographer got it. We will look into kind of ways to keep drivers aware of the signal in front of them as they go through, as they come down the ramp, in case visibility is impaired. We will also look into kind of ways to highlight that 2-stage left turn box, as well as if there is a no turn on red for this signal, that sign is required to be posted. So that will be definitely part of our design. And then I'm so sorry, Matt, did you catch the third piece of Rocky's comment?
I think Kathy might have, but it sounded like it was about cameras.
Thank you. I don't know that that is in our existing plan, but we can definitely coordinate that effort with the city and see if that's something that they have an appetite for as we kind of further these design efforts. So thank you, Rocky.
I don't see any more raised hands, so this might be a great time to finish up the written Q&A.
Alrighty, next in our queue for the written Q&A is from Mike Cotter. And it says, as safety issues have been identified, would it be possible to have any regulations of this intersection with police regulation, at least during rush hour? Oh, did I think we answered that.
Yeah, we got that one already.
Okay, sorry everybody, I'm reading through the queue here. This comment is from Brian Zamolka. I missed the beginning of the presentation, so I do not know if this was addressed, but it is improved parking for the UPS proposed as part of this design? If not, can it be? It's a disaster, and currently people park along the road and it's very difficult to see crossing off the ramp. Thank you, Brian, for your comment. Improvements to that parking lot are not currently part of this project, as that is a private development. I know that owner of the UPS store is aware of this project and can definitely voice those concerns. And I think we've addressed already that coming in and out of that parking lot is expected to be significantly easier with the installation of this signal.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that, Catherine, that a big part of what we were trying to do in the design here is not to make that parking lot any worse. So that was a big enough challenge as it was there. That big retaining wall is an obstacle to try to, find, for instance, safe places for pedestrians and cyclists and all that stuff. So that was something we looked at. But also, if you think about coming out of that intersection, if you've got a red, yellow, green traffic signal, you're going to be able to see that as you're exiting there, and that should make it feel a lot safer trying to figure out when it's safe to leave that driveway.
Also a great point. Thanks, Matt. Moving on to our next question is from Andrew Swanson. Vehicles fly down the I-93 off-ramp towards Willard and Richuti. This will pose a significant safety danger to cyclists awaiting at the proposed green box queue at the Richuti Willard. Can we implement speed calming measures along I-93 off-ramps, speed humps, narrowing the roadway, and other road diet measures? So that is something that we can take into consideration as we further the design. And as I have mentioned, that it will be very apparent. It is part of our job to make sure that it is very apparent to people coming off of the ramp that there is a signal ahead of them. That is part of our job as transportation engineers, is to make sure that everyone is safe, and making sure that people are safe in that turn box for cyclists is definitely a charge that we do not take lightly. So it will be part of our designed to make sure that everyone coming off the ramp is very aware of what is kind of the traffic pattern that they are coming into.
Yeah, and I would add to that, and this kind of addresses another comment that Cheryl had a little bit further on the list, that if you look at kind of just a little bit upstream on the ramp of the intersection, again, it is very tight. There's not a lot of space. Those are, as I'm sure you all are aware, those are some steep rock walls that the off ramp is kind of squeezed in between Willard and 93. So we did definitely talk about, could we add some curvature to the ramp to try to slow cars that way? I think they're not shown on this plan, but I think it's definitely possible that in the in our final design, you're gonna see like some trees planted along the edge of the ramp. Potentially that could be something we look at to try to do traffic calming there. But again, there's just not a lot of space, not a lot of wiggle room to do much with the off ramp.
Yeah, thanks for that, Matt. I think that's a critical piece to really outline. Keeping us moving through our written questions here, we have another one from Irene Lutt. Even better than bollards would be a curb level bike lane along Willard to Douglas, and that is definitely something that we can take into consideration as we further the design. Thanks, Irene. I will say that we have looked at kind of raising the bike lane downstream of the intersection, so between Ricciuti and Douglas, and we kind of went back and forth on that for several reasons, and I think it's still probably something that we could implement, but I'd have to go back on our design notes and figure out exactly why we're showing it the way we are at the moment. So that is something that I just want to say out loud, that is something that has been considered and will kind of continue to be considered in order to make bikes have a high level of comfort and safety as they move through this intersection. Our next one is from Betty Lowe, and I'm going to call back. It looks like this is in reference to something that Ed mentioned earlier. Ed Grennan just mentioned that a developer putting in monies, is that developer in question Corey Hills Associates? Are the development and progressions of this project dependent on this funding? And I'm going to give that one to you to open up.
I will grab that. The development that I spoke to earlier, I said it was elevation. I misspoke. It's actually the Q, which is located at the end of Ricciuti Drive. That is a development that has been built and occupied. And part of the planning process when that development was being discussed was a mitigation package for the city that we have received, and we have expended some of those monies with Fuss O'Neill as we have moved through this process. So there's no future project that the city is depending on money from in order to move this along.
Thanks so much, Ed. I appreciate it. Our next written comment is from Mary Kelly, and it said, should we presume that the city of Quincy will be responsible for enforcement and policing of traffic infractions, or will that be the responsibility of the state police? Mary, this intersection is going to be under city jurisdiction when the construction that you see on the screen here is completed. I will also note that the ramp will continue to be under Mass DOT jurisdiction. So kind of as infractions happen, it will kind of be a joint responsibility. I don't know if Kathy or Allie or Ed have more to say on that. It looks like not, with no one turning their camera on. So I think that will be a joint responsibility based on roadway jurisdiction, and it'll kind of continue to be the way that it is right now, with the state responsibility for what happens on the highway and the ramp, and then the city to be responsible for what happens on their city streets. Our next comment is from Andrew Swanson. Can we make the left turn from Willard onto the rest of Willard for cyclists and cars more obvious with painted green bike lane for the whole path? That is definitely something that can be explored, and I think we'll kind of a couple of you have highlighted how that two-stage bike box that's in front of the ramp feels a little bit disconnected from Willard Street, and I think adding some dashed lines there or adding some green paint, something to kind of note that that is a place where bikes are going to be, is something that we can take a look at as we further the design. We'll have to go back and look and see what the guidance, MassDOT has a lot of really good guidance for bike lanes. And so we can kind of explore different options for that. This is kind of the standard, and we can kind of see what feels right for this intersection and in order to make cyclists feel safest in this space. Our next question is another one from Brian Zamolka. I think the team should consider providing protected cycle track in lieu of the painted bike lanes. There are high speeds in this area with people trying to merge. And Brian, I appreciate your comment. I think this builds on something that Irene brought up earlier with the cycle track option in order to provide some contraflow. This is something that we can take into consideration as we move the design forward. And I also want to highlight that we're providing much more kind of strict space for where vehicles are going to merge throughout this area as they come down Willard and kind of continue towards the Rotary. That is going to be that merge is now going to happen separate from the bike lanes. And so that is already an improvement that we are hoping cyclists kind of feel the benefit of. And we will continue to kind of make sure that we can have the safest area possible and practical for kind of what this intersection design needs. And with that, I will continue. We have another one from Andrew Swanson. Can we ensure a no turn on red sign for cars making a right from I-93 off ramp onto Ricciuti? This will also make it easier for cars and cyclists leaving the UPS store. Yes, that is something that is going to be part of our design considerations for this, and that will be something that it will be part of our design for this. I don't mean to double myself there. Okay, moving on to, this is our final written comment, and then we can go back to Michael to see if there are any raised hands. The citywide, I'm sorry, this is from Alec, I believe it's Week. The citywide speed limit in Quincy is 25 miles per hour, but there is no sign informing people coming off the freeway of that. Can one be installed? I believe, I'm just reading through. So I don't believe that the city of Quincy statewide speed limit applies to the state jurisdiction on the ramp. I don't know if maybe Joe can provide some more detail on that. Joe Duquette from District 6, but that is to the best of my knowledge, that does not extend to the ramp and will only be enforceable once people kind of continue through the intersection.
Right. That is outside the city's, the citywide speed limit. That's part of the state highway layout.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. Super helpful. And thanks, Alex, for your comment. That's definitely a good one. Mary Lally now has our last comment in here that said, would installing rumble strips be helpful? So usually we see rumble strips as a measure to help with lane departure. People who we don't want to kind of be moving between lanes, the rumble strips are a really good tool. I'm wondering if the rumble strips are in conjunction with someone who made a comment earlier of putting them on the ramps. And we can take a look at traffic calming measures on the ramps, but I don't think that they are going to include rumble strips in terms of slowing down vehicles and kind of alerting them to an upcoming traffic pattern. And Matt, you've unmuted. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, this is also it's tough to do those rumble strips in a quiet way, and this is a pretty residential area. It was a good thought, though.
Yeah, great point. Mary Kelly has put in a written question to say, where does the ramp stop and the city street begin? That is a great question. I don't know that answer off the top of my head, and I know it's not shown on our map, but it is kind of, it encompasses the entirety of the ramp as it approaches the intersection. And then once you get to the intersection, that is city jurisdiction. I think that that's something that once we have a more final set of plans, that can be kind of, that line can be updated or reevaluated. Our next comment is Allie, sorry, did you want to?
I did, yeah. Just to speak to that a little bit, the state highway layout continues the ramp and through the intersection and continuing on Willard Street as it approaches the Furnace Brook Rotary. The city has jurisdiction on Raschuti Drive and the approach of Willard Street that comes up from Copeland Street. So at the intersection, we're looking at something cross-jurisdictional, but the state highway layout continues along in that southerly direction.
Thanks for that, Ellie. Our next comment here is another one from Irene Lutz. Looking at the merge controls on the approach to Douglas, it appears to be yellow paint. I know the yellow paint markings on the nearby Robertson Bridge are entirely ignored by drivers. Can there be a physical barrier that enforces the lane restriction? Be included? Again, that is definitely a good piece of information and something that we can take into consideration as we further these designs. With that, I'm going to move on to another comment from Matthew Lyons. Can you please repost the page to get the transcript and the presentation? So that will be, Connor, can you flip to that slide quickly? I believe it was, there we go. So it'll be posted on the city's website and you can get to that from the TPAL homepage. It'll be posted after this presentation. So that will be hopefully helpful to everyone that needs it. And I think that concludes our written questions.
Okay,
We do not have any raised hands at this time.
Okay, this is Kathy. To expand on Catherine's answer, the transcript from the stenographer will be available on the MassDOT website at a later date. Also, the presentation will be available on the MassDOT website as well as the City of Quincy website. Okay, I think that we've finally answered everybody's questions. I don't see anything in the chat, or I don't see any hands raised. Very good. Thank you all for attending. When you exit the Zoom seminar, a survey will automatically pop up. Please take a minute to fill it out. It is very short and your feedback is very important to us. We look forward to hearing from all of you. The design public hearing has now ended at 7:41 p.m.